The Oberlin article, for anybody who doesn't remember, Gibsons Bakery was a bakery in the vicinity of Oberlin College. I don't think it was directly on the campus. It might have been on the campus. I don't know how it works, like what the campus is. It did business with Oberlin. It had existed for 137 years. I think as of now, it existed for over 100 years in Oberlin as the local family-owned bakery, the Gibson family. It had been, not unfamiliar to shoplifting. It's what you own a shop, you get shoplifters. It's what happens. I didn't appreciate, by the way, that it was the day after Trump's election. I was just refreshing my own memory of the story. Trump was elected president November 8th, and it was the next day that this happened at Gibsons Bakery. Shoplifting. Gibsons, we've been in business for 137 years. We've had our fair share of shoplifters. That particular night, a student from the local college, Oberlin, tried to steal 2 bottles of wine and use a fake ID to buy a third. The son, Alan Gibson, pursued him across the street. There was a physical altercation, and the shoplifters, the students, who happened to be black, race would never have been a part of this story until it was made to be the center point, and wrongly so. They happen to be black. Okay. They alleged that they were profiled by the Gibsons Bakery, that they were pursued, that they were assaulted. The news breaks out that the Gibsons Bakery profiled black Oberlin students, physically assaulted them, and wrongly accused them of shoplifting. In reality, and ultimately what happened, the students pleaded guilty to shoplifting. They pleaded guilty to it. They made a statement that they were not racially profiled, but too bad, because by the time that happened, the proverbial poo-poo is out of the proverbial horse's proverbial butthole. And Oberlin ran with the narrative, as did it becomes madness, that Gibsons Bakery was a racist bakery, profiled these students, assaulted them. I mean, that was one of the accusations also, that Alan Gibson, the son, assaulted these students. And then, people within Oberlin began boycotting Gibsons, began handing out flyers saying it was a racist bakery with a history of racism. The uproar. The next day, I opened the store around 7 a.m. and I soon got a sense of what the father feared. Over the next few hours, hundreds of students began to gather in front of the store. They chanted "Boycott Gibsons" and held signs that we were white supremacists. They called us racists on their bullhorns. This is coming from one of the Gibson family members, but this account was confirmed even in the trial. Students weren't alone. This is where it gets really bad. College administrators were there too, handing out flyers and addressing the crowd on a bullhorn. The protesters also distributed flyers that said we had a long account of racial profiling and discrimination. This is the flyer that college administrators were handing out. And I believe, we don't need to get into all the details, I believe this flyer or something like it was on the campus, and college administrators refused to take it down. A long history. Protests continued. Before November 9, our relationship to the school had been wonderful. We delivered pizza dough, bagels, and cookies in the dining halls every day. What happened afterwards? A week after the incident, the school canceled all of our standing orders. That was just the beginning. They basically bankrupted the family. And they bankrupted the store. It had to go. It shut down for a bit. The school put out a statement that implied it wasn't an isolated incident. The school's student senate passed a resolution. This is like Simpsons level epic, out of control madness. It's like the "I didn't do it" boy. Just a frenzy. It's a frenzy of madness where no one takes a second to step back and say, is any of this true? But then you get into the world where it doesn't matter if this is true, like Jussie Smollett. It doesn't matter if this incident is true. Racism exists, so therefore this serves as the example, the reminder. Even though it turned out to be not just fabricated, it turned out to be so wrongful that it resulted in a court judgment after a trial by jury for $31 million. $31 million. The older Gibson died in the process of this. He was an older man. Shut down, stress, anxiety, everything. We don't need to go into all the details. I'll clip this article here. That's the backdrop of the story. Here, I don't know how to pin links, but and I just lost the rumble rant that I can't read. So that's the backdrop of the story. It turned out it was all bunk. It was a lie from the beginning. The college administrators knew that it was a lie. With the dean or the assistant dean, they knew that it was a lie. They refused to undo the wrong. They not only cut their contracts with Gibsons Bakery, they interfered with Gibsons Bakery's economic relations with third parties, boycott, slander, terrorizing them. In no lesser terms, terrorize them. They went to trial, and it was one heck of a doozy of a trial, and they lost. Boy, howdy did they lose. They lost, and the jury awarded punitive damages in excess of the statutory limit. It was reduced a little bit, but they were ordered to pay $31 million. Oberlin to the bakery. Bakery's back in business, I presume, now. Oberlin tried to get out of, they appealed. They asked for an appeal to the Ohio Supreme Court, rejected 3-0, said they couldn't, they at one point I think they said they couldn't pay because they didn't have the money, which turned out not to be true. Let's see here. I brought up the Wikipedia article for one reason. Here we go. On April 1, 2022, the 9th Ohio District Court of Appeal dismissed Oberlin College's appeal. In a 3-0 decision, the panel upheld the jury verdict that Oberlin College defamed, inflicted distress, and illegally interfered with the bakery. The damages were capped by Ohio state law, I'm talking like an Ohioan, at $25 million in total damages, in place of the jury's original verdict of $11.1 million of compensatory and $33.2 million in punitive. Oberlin was ordered to pay $6.3 million in attorney's fees to the bakery. Wow. By the way, I'm not saying that the lawyers don't deserve that. This was years in the making. But wow. Oberlin College sought review of the Supreme Court of Ohio May 13 and later moved to stay enforcement of the $31.3 million award and fees. The court granted Oberlin's College motion for stay while it considered the parties' briefs, but declined to grant certiorari on August 30, 2022. Oberlin College published a statement expressing disappointment in the Supreme Court's decision not to review the jury verdict or Lorain County Court of Common Pleas rulings. The Bakery Council praised the decision and told reporters, quote, Oberlin tried to frame this case with claims and issues that weren't on trial. This has never been a case about a student's First Amendment rights. Individuals' reputations should never be sacrificed at a false altar of free speech. David Gibson died in November 2019 at 65. Alan Gibson, the elder, died February 22nd at age 93. Sorry, it was Gibson who died during this, not at a ripe old age. Stress will kill you. This type of stress that Oberlin deliberately inflicted on this family-owned bakery, a cornerstone of the community. I think it would not be too hyperbolic to say it contributed to the untimely death of David Gibson, 65 years old. People can't understand that type of stress that litigation inflicts. But that's not the purpose. That was the backdrop. That was the current news. Oberlin's going to pay, and they're going to pay, and they deserve to. New York Times. They're going to have to borrow the Washington Compost's moniker. The New York Times comes out and they report on it. How do we think the New York Times is going to report on this? It's so pathological, people. It's pathological. It's not the old gray lady. It's got to be the old caca lady. It's pathological. Listen to this framing. Listen. Oberlin College has agreed to pay. They're so benevolent. They've agreed to pay $36.59 million to a bakery that said it was falsely accused of racism after it caught a student shoplifting. People, it's pathological. We need to appreciate this. Every time we read something, we need to back up and see how are we being lied to? How are we being misled here? I think how many are we here? Of the 4,331 people watching right now, I think we are probably by and large very, very well equipped to know how we're being misled here. But for the newbies, for the noobs, and for the new arrivals, and for those who are going to be watching this for the first time as it gets shared around the interwebs, Oberlin College has agreed to pay $36.59 million. That's a funny way of saying comply with a court order. That's like saying, let me think of somebody who will not upset anybody with the comparison. That's like saying, oh, geez, now I can't remember his name. The UFC fighter who just went to jail for. That's like saying that someone has agreed to go to jail while they're handcuffed and being hauled off by the cops. They've agreed to go to jail. They've agreed to pay the $36.5 million that was ordered by the lower court, ratified by the higher court, and a subsequent appeal refused by the higher court. They have agreed to pay what the court ordered them to pay. Very benevolent. Lie one. New York Times, you are rubbish. After the bakery said it was falsely accused. No, not at this point. It's a judicial fact, if not a cosmic fact, that the bakery was falsely accused of racism. It's a judicial fact. The court found it. The jury found it. It's a fact. They didn't say they were falsely accused. They were falsely accused of racism. That's why they were ordered to pay the $36.59 million that Oberlin has so graciously agreed to pay. But by the way, they'll never be able to be called totally fake news because the lead was buried. Get past the headline, get past the misleading tweet that shows Oberlin in a benevolent light, not the liars, the business destroyers, the person crushers that they are for politically motivated reasons. No, they're benevolent. Oberlin agreed to pay after the Ohio. That's what I said. Okay. In the article, the decision by the college's board of trustees, it's not a decision. They will seize assets if you don't pay it. It's not a decision by the board of trustees. It's a court order. The decision by the college's board of trustees announced Thursday came 9 days after the Ohio Supreme Court had declined to hear the college's appeal. Oh, okay. The begrudging decision to respect the court order came 9 days after their request for an appeal was denied. Truth Matters, Lee E. Placas, the lawyer for Gibson family, said in an email Thursday, David, supported by a principled community, can still beat Goliath. Yeah, except David passed away at 65. Alan passed away at 93. The family is going to see some justice. In as much as you can see justice under circumstances like this, I have a sneaking suspicion they would have said in 2016, hey, Gibson Bakery, this is the hell that we're going to put you through for the next 6 years. Would you go through this hell for $36 million, or would you just like to go on running your business the way you've run it for 127 years? I think I know what the answer would have been. Nobody would agree to go through the hell that they went through for 6 years, even if they knew at the end of the 6 years of hell, for those who are still alive, they'd get $36 million. It's not worth it. And yeah, that's the news. So, the W for Oberlin, the W for Gibson's Bakery marches on. But New York Times, pathological, gaslighting, liars.